They say betrayal stings worse when it comes from someone you've trusted with your heart. For me, it wasn't just the sting, it was a fire that consumed everything I thought I knew, leaving behind only the resolve to even the score. Clara and I met 12 years ago, back when ambition was the only thing keeping me up at night. I was a young architect hungry for my first big project. She was a bright, energetic fitness trainer with a magnetic smile that lit up every room she entered. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. Fast forward a decade, and my world revolved around two things: building a legacy in my field and creating a stable, loving home for Liam, our 8-year-old son. Clara seemed happy, or at least I believed she was. But cracks started appearing in her veneer about a year ago. She began staying out late, always with the same excuse: I have a new client who can only train in the evenings. At first, I brushed it off. Her career thrived on flexibility, and I had no reason to doubt her. But then there were the subtle changes. Her phone never left her side, locked behind a code I didn't know. She started picking fights, small petty arguments that seemed to serve no purpose other than creating distance between us. The final straw came during Liam's last soccer match. Clara was physically there but emotionally elsewhere, glued to her phone the entire time. When I asked her who she was texting, she responded curtly, "Just work." I knew better. The realization came slowly, like piecing together a puzzle you weren't sure you wanted to finish. Her gym bag, which used to carry just a few essentials, now looked stuffed with clothes I'd never seen her wear. She started wearing perfume, something she never bothered with for a job that required sweat. Then there were the smiles. Not for me, but the ones she gave her phone. Intimate, sly smiles I hadn't seen her flash since our early days together. I could have confronted her right then, demanded the truth, but something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the need to know for certain before I ripped our lives apart. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to make her pay. That's when I decided to dig. Suspicion eats at you like acid, but I wasn't going to let it consume me. I needed answers, hard evidence that couldn't be dismissed as paranoia. Fortunately, my profession had taught me patience and precision, skills that would serve me well in uncovering Clara's betrayal. The opportunity came one evening when she left her car keys on the counter. I had recently installed a GPS tracker in her car, a precaution I told myself was for safety. After activating the device through an app, I waited. For the next 2 weeks, her car's movements painted a damning picture. Clara would leave for work, head to the gym, and stay for her supposed late-night sessions. But instead of returning home, the tracker showed her car parked repeatedly at the same location, the Azure Grand Hotel. At first, I told myself there could be an innocent explanation. Maybe she had a client who worked late and preferred training in the hotel's gym. But the time gaps between her arrivals and departures told a different story. One night, she was careless. Clara's smartwatch, synced to her phone, was left charging in the kitchen while she slept. A notification pinged, and I couldn't resist. The message was from someone named Brandon. "Brandon, you looked amazing tonight. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same time, same room." That was enough to make my pulse spike, but the attached image, a selfie of Brandon shirtless, grinning like a man who'd just gotten away with murder, sealed it. This wasn't just a client. The name was familiar. Brandon was a real estate mogul, known for his flashy lifestyle and smooth-talking bravado. I'd seen him in passing once or twice when picking Clara up from the gym. He was the kind of man who believed the world owed him its attention. Now it seemed, he thought he was owed my wife as well. But impulsiveness wasn't my style. Confronting Clara then and there would have been satisfying in the short term but wouldn't give me the closure I needed. I wanted the full story, and I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. I contacted a friend who specialized in digital forensics and had him extract everything he could from Clara's smartwatch and phone backups. The texts were just the beginning. Photos, dates, and explicit messages painted a vivid picture of their escapades. Most damning was a recurring series of bookings at the Azure Grand, always under Brandon's name. Still, I wasn't satisfied. If I was going to dismantle her world, I needed more. Surveillance footage from the hotel was the final piece of the puzzle. A mutual acquaintance, who owed me a favor, worked in security there. A discreet request gave me access to grainy but undeniable video clips of Clara and Brandon entering a room together late at night, only to leave hours later. When I watched the first clip, something inside me shifted. Anger, humiliation, and heartbreak coalesced into a cold, steely resolve. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about the life we'd built, the years of sacrifices I'd made, being trampled on like they were meaningless. But two people had betrayed me, not one. Brandon had knowingly stepped into my world, laughing in the shadows while he played house with my wife. They both needed to learn what happens when you betray someone who has everything to lose, and the means to make you regret it. Betrayal is a game played with two moves, the one that cuts you open and the one where you decide how deep to cut back. I was past the first move and ready for the second. But this wasn't going to be a heated, impulsive outburst. Clara and Brandon had plotted their betrayal meticulously, and I owed them the courtesy of a response just as methodical. I spent nights crafting the blueprint for their downfall. By the time I finished, I had a plan so thorough that no corner of their lives would remain untouched. Clara would lose everything she valued, and Brandon? He would wish he'd stayed far away from my wife. The first step was financial security, mine, not hers. I began funneling our joint assets into a trust under Liam's name. Clara had never been interested in the minutiae of our finances, and I'd always managed them solo. By the time she noticed, the bank accounts we shared would be drained, leaving her only the meager savings in her personal account. While securing my assets, I also started pulling the strings of my connections. A quiet inquiry revealed that Brandon's wife, Amanda, was an influencer whose career thrived on her image as a philanthropic role model. I wondered if Amanda was aware that her husband's extracurricular activities would make headlines in a heartbeat. To set the stage for my revenge, I hired a private investigator. It wasn't hard to find dirt on Brandon. He wasn't just sleeping around, he was sloppy about it. Photos, receipts, and damning messages left a trail that could only be described as a monument to his arrogance. But the most valuable find was Amanda herself. Unlike her husband, Amanda was genuine, driven by her passion for charitable work and beloved by her followers. She was the kind of person people rallied behind, someone who would turn Brandon's infidelity into a public crusade. The real piece de resistance was the dinner party. I invited Clara, Brandon, and Amanda under the pretense of a networking opportunity. Clara was hesitant at first but agrees, seeing this as an opportunity to blend her two lives without suspicion. I was preparing for the evening. A catered menu, fine wine, and warm, ambient lighting set the stage for what Clara and Brandon believed would be a night of indulgence. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush. On the night of the dinner, Clara dressed to impress, wearing a dress I didn't recognize, probably one Brandon had bought her. She was buzzing with excitement, though she masked it poorly. Brandon arrived next, oozing his usual cocky charm, while Amanda followed close behind, wearing a serene smile. I played the perfect host, greeting everyone warmly and guiding them to the dining table. Over drinks, Brandon boasted about his latest property acquisition, and Clara laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. As dessert approached, I stood, raising my glass. "Before we move on to dessert," I said, my voice calm and steady, "I thought it would be nice to share a little video I made. A tribute to all the connections in this room." The projector whirred to life, and the screen lit up with footage of Clara and Brandon entering the Azure Grand Hotel. Their faces were unmistakable, their bodies pressed close as they walked hand in hand. Gasps filled the room, Amanda's sharp inhale cutting through the silence. The next clips were even worse. Screenshots of explicit texts, timestamps aligning perfectly with their hotel visits. By the time the video ended, the room was ice cold. Clara's face was ashen, and Brandon sat frozen, his trademark smirk obliterated. "Now that introductions are out of the way," I said, setting my glass down, "how about dessert?" Their stunned silence was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. Clara stumbled over her words, muttering excuses about misunderstandings and boundaries, but Amanda was already on her feet, glaring daggers at her husband. "You bastard," Amanda hissed, venom dripping from every syllable. Brandon tried to speak, but Amanda wasn't having it. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving Brandon and Clara to flounder in their humiliation. I didn't say another word. I simply cleared the plates, letting the weight of their choices settle over them. They had played their game, and now it was my turn. When you aim for revenge, precision is key. Clara and Brandon had walked straight into my trap, but the dinner was only the beginning. They would discover, step by step, that their betrayal had cost them everything. Brandon's smugness, his overconfidence, that was his Achilles heel. He thought his wealth and reputation made him untouchable, but he'd underestimated two things: how deeply his wife, Amanda, despised betrayal and how much damage an architect with a plan could do. The day after the dinner, Amanda filed for divorce, armed with the evidence I'd given her. In one swift move, Brandon's life unraveled. Amanda's PR team turned the divorce into a public spectacle, spinning a narrative of resilience and empowerment. News outlets picked up the story, splashing headlines like, "Real Estate Tycoon's Double Life Exposed," across every major platform. Sponsors and clients dropped Brandon faster than I could have imagined. By the end of the week, his reputation was in tatters. Amanda's divorce settlement stripped him of half his assets, including their sprawling mansion and several lucrative properties. Brandon had once bragged about his perfect life. Now, it was in ruins. Clara wasn't faring much better. By the time she realized what was happening, our joint accounts were empty, save for a modest sum I'd left to keep her from suspecting anything earlier. Her credit cards stopped working. Calls to our bank revealed she no longer had access to any of the assets we'd once shared. She confronted me one morning, her face pale with fear. "What's going on, Ethan?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Why are our accounts frozen?" I sipped my coffee calmly, letting her desperation wash over me. "They aren't our accounts anymore," I replied. "They're Liam's now. I've been setting up a trust for him. His future deserves to be secure, don't you think?" "You can't do this," she yelled, her voice breaking. "I need access to my money." "Our money," I corrected, standing to face her. "And I think you've had enough of it. You've been spending plenty on your little client, haven't you?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I left her standing there, her world crumbling beneath her feet. While Clara scrambled to piece her life together, I wasn't done. I created a website, a private page containing all the evidence of her affair. The hotel footage, screenshots of her messages, and even photos of her and Brandon at the gym together. I didn't broadcast it to the world, but I made sure it landed in the inboxes of her most influential friends and colleagues. The fallout was swift. Gossip spread like wildfire, and Clara became the center of whispers at every social gathering she once enjoyed. Clients began canceling their sessions with her. The gym owner, eager to avoid a scandal, made it clear she was no longer welcome to train there. By the time I revoked the lease on her studio space, citing urgent renovations, she had nowhere to turn. Amanda reached out to me a few weeks later, thanking me for exposing Brandon. We met for coffee, her idea, and shared stories of our respective betrayals. What struck me most was her resilience. She'd taken her pain and used it to fuel her brand, garnering even more support from her followers. "You handled this with an impressive level of calm," she said, a wry smile playing on her lips. "It wasn't about calm," I replied. "It was about precision. People like Brandon and Clara think they can get away with anything. They don't expect someone to outplay them." Amanda laughed, a genuine sound that contrasted with the chaos we both endured. We parted as allies, not romantically linked but bound by a shared experience. Of course, that connection drove Brandon and Clara insane. Brandon ended up selling his prized properties to cover the legal fees and the lavish lifestyle he could no longer afford. His name became synonymous with scandal in the real estate world, effectively blacklisting him from his own industry. Clara, on the other hand, was reduced to working part-time gigs to make ends meet. She moved in with a friend, couch surfing while trying to salvage her reputation. She reached out to me once, asking if we could talk. I agreed, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I wanted to see the defeat in her eyes. "I made a mistake," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was selfish. But Ethan, we have a son. Can't we figure this out?" I leaned back, studying her. "You're right about one thing," I said. "We have a son. And he deserves better than to grow up watching his father tolerate betrayal." That was the last time we spoke. Just when I thought the dust had settled, a surprising opportunity arose. An industry colleague reached out with a proposal for a new housing development project. The twist? The site was the same property where Clara's former studio had been located. I couldn't resist. I took on the project and rebranded the space as Phoenix Rise, a housing initiative for single parents and families recovering from hardship. The irony was delicious, and I made sure the name was featured prominently in local media coverage. Clara saw the news, of course. I never heard her reaction directly, but I didn't need to. Word reached me through mutual friends that she'd broken down in tears when she realized the space she'd once called her own had been transformed into something far greater. Brandon, meanwhile, was seen less and less in social circles. The man who once commanded attention wherever he went had become a pariah, his wealth and charm no longer enough to shield him from the consequences of his actions. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it has a way of dulling the edges. Months after everything unraveled, I found myself reflecting on how betrayal can redefine a person, not just the betrayer, but also the one who's been wronged. I hadn't just survived Clara's deceit, I had thrived in its wake. My career reached new heights, with Phoenix Rise becoming a landmark project that garnered both professional acclaim and personal satisfaction. Liam was adjusting well too, his routine unshaken as I made sure his life remained as stable as possible. He was my anchor through it all, a reminder of what mattered most. Clara's fall from grace was as swift as it was devastating. Without financial support or a solid reputation, she struggled to rebuild her life. She moved in with a friend, sharing a cramped apartment far removed from the comfort of our old home. Her attempts to start anew in the fitness world faltered. The whispers of her affair followed her everywhere, and clients were reluctant to associate with someone whose personal drama had gone viral in the worst way. Once, I spotted her at the grocery store. She looked different, tired, worn down, a shadow of the vibrant woman I'd married. She saw me too, but neither of us acknowledged the other. There was nothing left to say. Brandon fared no better. Amanda's divorce settlement had gutted his finances, leaving him to sell off properties and luxury cars to keep himself afloat. His name became synonymous with scandal in the real estate world, and prospective clients avoided him like the plague. The last I heard, he'd taken a job at a smaller firm, far removed from the high-profile deals he used to boast about. It was a humbling, humiliating descent for a man who once acted like the world owed him everything. If anyone emerged stronger from this mess, it was Amanda. Her divorce turned her into a media darling, a symbol of resilience and empowerment. She used the public attention to grow her brand, launching a foundation for women recovering from infidelity and abuse. We remained close, though our relationship stayed platonic. She often joked about the rumors that swirled around us. "Let them think whatever they want," she said with a smirk one evening. "They're already living rent-free in their misery. Might as well give them something to talk about." As for me, I poured my energy into Liam and my work. I stayed focused on the future, but I wasn't naive. Betrayal leaves scars, and I carried mine with me. They didn't define me, but they reminded me of lessons I'd learned the hard way. Trust is fragile, loyalty is earned, and revenge, when wielded with precision, can be the most cathartic closure of all. The final piece of my revenge wasn't something I planned. It happened naturally, a poetic end to the story. One evening, Liam was working on a school project about family. He asked me, "What does Phoenix Rise mean, Dad?" I smiled, the name taking on a deeper meaning than I'd originally intended. It means starting over, no matter how hard it is. Rising from the ashes. And that's exactly what I'd done.